Welcome back to the program, everyone. It is 8:15 in the a.m. and time for our second discussion of the morning. And I mentioned it at the top of the program. 2 weeks away, yes. Just a matter of a couple of weeks, Indonesia will be holding its general elections. The democratic process will involve at least 200 million voters. Now, furthermore, this will be just the second time that people with mental disorders will be able to cast their votes.
Yes, they've actually been able to cast their votes since 2015.
Right.
And according to the General Election Commission, there are more than 1,100,000 or 0.54% of registered voters with special needs, while 265,000 more with mental disorders. Now, have their voting rights in the upcoming polls been guaranteed? So, discussing on the topic and how much has the election organizers facilitate voters with mental disorders, joining us this morning is Khoirunnisa Agustiyati. She's the Executive Director of the Association for Election and Democracy, or Perludem, right here on the C Morning Show. Good morning, Mbak Ninis.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So, when we talk about citizens with mental disorders, what categories would indicate that, okay, these people are with mental disorders?
Yeah, actually, generally in our election law, the requirement for voters is Indonesia citizen who is already 17 years old on the election day, or have been married. So under 17, if you are already married, then you can be a voters. So that is all the requirements. So there is no other requirements. For example, you are not allowed if you are a mental disorder or physical disability. So actually the requirement is that general. So the general election have to register all of Indonesian citizens that already 17 years old or have been married. So there is no limitation for anyone with disability or not disability. But then, before 2015, there was a regulation in the election law and also local election law mentioned that if you are mental disorder, you cannot be registered on the voter list.
That's before 2015?
Yes, before 2015.
Why was that?
So that is why Perludem and the other disability organization, we did a judicial review to the Constitutional Court, asking the court to change this regulation, because if we are talking about rights, it's all the citizen rights. We are not distinguished whether you are disability or not disability. So, and then the Constitutional Court granted our petition on 2015.
Okay, so what we are just talking about here is someone that has an official diagnosis from a medical expert that says they have some sort of, and when we say mental issue, it could be anything, right? I mean, we're talking like depression can even be a mental issue, or bipolar disorder. So right now, what is the legal basis for their voting rights? Like, everyone has the same voting rights despite any sort of diagnosis, or is there a severity level if somebody is, say, committed to a mental institution? Do they still have voting rights?
Yes, actually, based on the expert that give their expertise on the court, he said that actually the condition of the mental disorder is periodic, so it's not permanent actually. So as long as their condition is able to vote, then they are able to vote. So and then the court said that. So actually, you don't have to get any recommendation from the doctor to go to the voter to the polling station actually, but the court said it has to be the expert that declare you that you are not able to vote.
So
not able to vote?
Right.
Yes, but not able to vote. So,
well, for example, if I was in a mental institution and I'm not allowed to leave, that would be a reason why I wouldn't be allowed to vote, because I couldn't leave on my own.
Yeah, and you would have to have that letter.
Correct,
Yes.
right?
Basically announcing that this person cannot vote.
Right, so it's the opposite. It's not you get a letter so you can vote, but you would have to get a letter to say that you cannot. Okay,
Yes.
and it has to be from the expert, so it cannot from, for example, if your neighbor said, oh, you have mental disorder, and then you are not allowed to go to the polling station.
Right.
Yeah. When citizens with experiencing mental disorders are going to the polling station to vote, do they have, does the government or the local government or the KPU, the General Election Commission, provide special assistance or no?
Yeah, actually there is assistance, special assistant, and KPU actually have like their facility for not only for the mental disorder but also the physical disorder. But the principle is every voters, every citizen that has the right to vote, the principle is they have to vote directly. So without assistance from anyone.
They have to do it on their own.
Yes. So we talk about the access.
Yeah.
So we have to open the access for every voters. But the problem is sometimes the challenge is about the stigma, because sometimes when we talk about mental disorder, people think about crazy people, homeless people.
Yes.
So they generalize that we are talking about mental disorder. We talk about homeless people that crazy or something like that.
Yeah.
So there is still a stigma, and also disinformation, hoax in media, social sometimes also have the role. For example, in 2019 election, there was a hoax like a KPU make an obligation for mental disorder. They have to go to the polling station. It was a hoax, so that is why there is like a stigma from the society, and they compare it like our religious, for example, in Muslim.
Yeah.
Even if you are if you have a mental disorder, you are not obliged to do 5 times of prayers, for example.
Right.
So why you have to go to the polling station? So there is still hoax and stigma in the society. So it impacted that voters with mental disorders are lost their voting rights on the like election.
Or they're not even aware that they had it to begin with, right? And
Right.
our colleague earlier as well, Caroline, mentioned,
Yeah.
did you notice that when you went to the polling station last time, there's always somebody just kind of watching, and that's to make sure that no one is influencing what you're going to
Yes,
vote in and
yes,
around.
yes.
You're about to step in the
Correct.
poll. So is this the sort of special attention that everyone would receive, including those with mental disorders as well? Because we do know that with certain disorders, you may have some sort of pressure put on you, and you might easily be swayed one way or another, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the election contestants. There are 3 presidential and vice presidential candidates. Marissa mentioned the number. It's quite large, 265,000,
Yes.
those that have been diagnosed with mental disorders. Have the presidential and vice presidential candidates kind of given any attention to this sort of rights that many of us aren't even aware that those with mental disorders have, in order to kind of direct them in the right direction as to what they should do on voting day?
Yeah, I still don't see clearly from these 3 candidates to give access for the disability people in Indonesia, because yes, they might say something about that, but it's like only on their vision and mission and their documents. So, but the problem is the mental disorder, also physical disability voters, they still have intimidation, for example, discrimination during the election day, because they don't have the access. The access is not fulfilled, even though by the election commission. For example, voters who live in a social shelter, actually they have the right to vote, but sometimes they are not registered on the voter list. So if you are not registered on the voter list, you cannot vote on the election day. So so you lose your voting rights as a citizen. There is still talking about the accessibility for the mental disorder. And then sometimes the approach for disability voters, sometimes we see them as a sick person.
Yeah.
The approach is not because they have the same rights with the other citizen, but we see them as a sick person.
Why is that? I mean, why do we have that sort of way of seeing people with mental disorder, or even people with disabilities? I mean,
I mean, even if you're sick, you will still know who you're going to vote for, right? Logically speaking.
It's like, why is our society like that exactly? And how do we begin to change that perception?
Yeah, because society still think like you said that we can the disability person cannot vote rightly. Even if we are sick.
That's quite condescending, actually, right?
True,
Because sometimes if we are, as people said, we are a normal person, we can also make a better decision in the
Sure.
voting rights, right?
Yeah.
So there is still a stigma. We see sometimes people see them like a sick person just because they are different with the normal person.
So how do we change that? How do we change what kind of behavior should we adopt so that we give the same safe space, even for those with mental disorder, to vote and to feel okay and to feel good, to feel welcome and accepted?
Yes, I think one thing that we should talk about this more, because sometimes people don't want to talk about it, just because they are different.
Right.
They are different, they don't have the same right with the other normal people.
Yeah.
And talking about the regulation, actually the regulation is already there, but sometimes the stigma is not only from the society, but sometimes the election commission members also have the same stigma. For example,
Interesting.
yes, they don't go to the they don't go to the social shelter to registered voters over there.
Right.
They don't go to the hospital, for example, and
Yes.
even sometimes our family, the family that have a family member with the mental disorder, sometimes they feel ashamed to say that I have the family with the mental disorder. So when the staff of the commissioner come to register the voter, they are not listed.
They don't register them.
I see. Okay.
Well,
Wow.
hopefully that there's more awareness in regards to this as well,
Yes.
because we weren't too clear as to what the rules are. But the rules are everyone
It's
has the
there.
same rights,
Yeah,
basically,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And they should exercise those rights
Yeah.
despite what sort of condition you're in. And in your opinion, real quick before we cut to break here, do you think that the polling stations and all the accessibility is better this time around compared to when this rule was first implemented in 2015?
Yeah, actually there is a progress since 2004. But for example, the condition of the polling station need to be accessible for the wheelchair voters, for example.
Right.
For physical disability, yes, there is a progress. But for the mental disability, the progression is not like our approach for the physical disability, because there is stigma on their mind. For example, when people talking about she cannot vote because she is on depression, so don't accept her if she come to the polling station, for example. It still happens in our society.
Yeah.
Especially when you vote. I mean, you're voting around all your neighbors
Yeah.
and everything,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That could happen in a
Yeah,
society.
yeah, yeah. But you know, whether you have mental disorder or not, we have the same right to vote.
Yeah, your voice still counts, right?
Exactly.
Thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you,
by
Manny.
and
You're
enlightening
welcome.
more on this situation. We're going to take another short break here on the program, but we have more updates for you when we return here on the C Morning Show. Stay tuned.